Anita Wood, the woman who believed she'd found her forever in Elvis Presley, soon found herself standing at the edge of a devastating truth, a betrayal that would shatter her dreams and leave her world turned upside down. As Elvis's girlfriend and confidant, she had faith in their love, sure that no one could come between them. But a hidden secret was slowly unraveling, one that would force Elvis to confront his deepest feelings and make an impossible choice. What happened next left Anita crushed, her heartbroken tears marking the painful end of a love story that seemed destined to last. This shocking turn, when Elvis found himself caught between two loves, would redefine their relationship and leave Anita with a decision she never expected to face. Stay with us as we uncover this heart-wrenching moment that forever altered the course of her life and his. Number 6. Introducing Elvis and Anita. In 1957, Anita Wood was more than just another Hollywood starlet on the rise. She was a young woman filled with dreams and ambition, carving out her own path in the entertainment world. With her captivating beauty and undeniable talent, she had begun catching the attention of audiences across the country. Yet, there was one fan whose admiration would change her life in ways she could never have imagined. Elvis Presley, already on his way to becoming a household name, was taken by Anita's charm, and a romance quickly blossomed. Together, they seemed like a perfect pair, and before long, Anita became a central figure in Elvis's world, sharing moments, secrets, and dreams that only they knew. She wasn't just any girlfriend. She was the woman Elvis envisioned beside him, both in his life and at the height of his fame. Their relationship was far from casual. Anita grew close to Elvis's family, even spending long stretches at Graceland while he traveled, strengthening her bond with the Presley household. This closeness painted a picture of a couple destined for the long haul. Elvis's family welcomed her warmly, embracing her as a part of their lives. Anita felt grounded in this life, believing their relationship had a solid foundation that would withstand any test. She found comfort and belonging at Graceland, where she filled the spaces Elvis left behind, waiting patiently for his return. To Anita, this commitment was a sign that their love was something worth holding on to, and she saw herself becoming a lasting part of his future. But not everyone saw things the same way. Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's infamous manager, had a different vision for the young star. As Elvis prepared to serve in Germany, Parker believed that having a girlfriend by his side, even one as lovely and dedicated as Anita, would interfere with Elvis's image. Parker's plan was to keep Elvis looking available, enhancing his appeal to fans worldwide. Anita, despite her devotion, was kept at arm's length, her hopes of joining Elvis abroad quietly dashed by Parker's calculating moves. She could only wait and watch from afar, unaware that this separation would open doors to a new and unexpected chapter in Elvis's life, one that would ultimately place her heart in the crossfire of a love she thought was unbreakable. Number 5. The arrival of Priscilla. In Germany, fate would bring 14-year-old Priscilla Beaulieu into Elvis's life, a moment that would forever alter the path of his relationship with Anita. At the time, Priscilla was just a teenager, living overseas with her family as her father served in the military. But her age and background didn't seem to matter once she met Elvis. Their connection was immediate, creating a bond that surprised those around them, and stirred whispers that Elvis had found someone who had managed to capture his attention in a way few others could. Despite the distance between them, a spark was lit, one that would grow stronger with time, unspoken yet potent, casting a shadow over everything Elvis had left back in the United States. While Elvis was stationed abroad, rumors began reaching Anita, back in the U.S., about a sweetheart in his life, a young girl whose name had started surfacing among Elvis's fans and in the press. Anita initially brushed off these whispers, believing them to be just that, idle gossip about the man she loved. But as the rumors grew louder, Anita couldn't ignore them. She began to feel the weight of uncertainty and suspicion pressing in on her, the confidence she once had in their love beginning to waver. Priscilla was increasingly mentioned, her presence somehow invading the safe and familiar world Anita shared with Elvis. Each new rumor, each mention of this young girl from Germany, chipped away at the foundation of trust she had built, leaving her with a gnawing sense that something was slipping through her fingers. The breaking point came when Anita stumbled upon a letter from Priscilla, a message that laid her suspicions bare. In the letter, Priscilla begged Elvis to speak to her father, hoping he might help her arrange a visit. This was no longer just a whispered rumor. Here was tangible proof that the connection was real and that Priscilla was not merely a passing acquaintance. Confronted with the letter, Anita turned to Elvis, demanding answers. Caught off guard, Elvis tried to downplay Priscilla's importance, insisting they were just friends and pleading with Anita not to say anything that might jeopardize his reputation or career. In that moment, Anita was left in a whirlwind of emotions, torn between believing Elvis and facing the harsh reality that her love was caught up in something far more complicated than she had ever imagined. Number 4. Anita's growing suspicion. Priscilla's letters arrived in a manner that was impossible to ignore. Bright pink envelopes, each marked with a touch of youthful innocence that belied the turmoil they would eventually cause. These letters became a regular fixture, filling Elvis's mailbox and, in time, his life. Despite the striking appearance of each envelope and the clear affection within, Elvis would reassure Anita time and again that this correspondence was nothing more than a friendship. He would laugh off her concerns, dismissing the letters as the fantasies of a teenage admirer who had been swept up in his world. "She's just a friend," he'd insist, a phrase that seemed to echo repeatedly as if to convince them both. But as these letters continued to arrive, each with heartfelt words and sometimes pleas for his attention, Anita could feel something inside her beginning to shift. Despite Elvis's reassurances, Anita found it harder and harder to believe that there was nothing more behind these bright pink notes. The rumors about Elvis and Priscilla persisted, and each new whisper or fan theory fueled Anita's doubts. She tried to push away the gnawing feeling of betrayal, reminding herself of Elvis's loyalty, of the years they'd spent together, and of the love they shared. But the evidence was mounting in subtle ways, growing impossible to ignore. Friends and fans began referring to Priscilla as Elvis's sweetheart, adding weight to the suspicion that this was no ordinary pen pal. Anita could feel the foundation of her trust in Elvis eroding with each passing day, each letter that appeared. Each moment, she had to remind herself of the words he used to calm her fears. Then came the turning point that would forever change everything. Unbeknownst to Anita, Elvis made a decision that shattered the promises he'd made to Priscilla's parents to keep their interactions at a distance. He arranged for Priscilla to secretly fly to America, a bold move that disregarded his assurances to her family and underscored the depth of his connection to her. Instead of limiting their meeting to Memphis as promised, he whisked Priscilla away to Las Vegas, cloaking their rendezvous in secrecy. When Anita learned of this trip, the truth she'd been trying to deny came crashing down around her. This wasn't just a friendship, it was something far deeper, something that had now intruded upon the very life she had built with him. In that moment, Anita realized she was not just competing with a distant admirer, she was standing in the shadow of a love that had grown beyond her reach. Number 3, midpoint revelation. One evening, as Anita moved quietly through the halls of Graceland, she overheard a conversation that would bring her worst fears into sharp, undeniable focus. Descending the back staircase into the kitchen, she paused as Elvis's voice drifted from the next room. Speaking with his father, Vernon, Elvis's words were raw, unguarded, full of a vulnerability he rarely showed. Anita's heart pounded as she heard him confess the struggle that had been tearing him apart. He was grappling with a decision, wavering between the two loves that had claimed his heart. "I'm having the hardest time making up my mind between the two," he murmured, a statement that struck Anita like a lightning bolt. In that moment, her suspicions turned to a painful certainty. This wasn't just in her mind, nor was it mere rumor. Elvis was genuinely torn between her and Priscilla. The world she'd known, the love she had built with him, now felt as fragile as glass, ready to shatter. With her emotions boiling over, Anita could no longer hold back. She entered the room, her presence shifting the air with a sense of finality. Elvis looked up, caught off guard, his face a mixture of surprise and guilt. Anita didn't hesitate. The words poured out, confronting him about what she'd overheard. She demanded the truth, a real answer, not the reassurances and half-truths he had given her before. Sitting down together with Vernon nearby, Elvis's defenses crumbled under the weight of Anita's heartbreak. He couldn't deny it any longer, couldn't shield her from the choice he had been too afraid to make. The room filled with a tension that neither of them could ease, and as tears welled up in Anita's eyes, she knew that the love they had shared was slipping beyond her control. Elvis, too, sat in silent agony, torn between the two lives he had built, but unable to offer her the closure she so desperately needed. It was a moment they would both carry forever, a painful, unspoken understanding that this was the beginning of the end. Number 2. The heartbreaking decision. Sitting across from each other in the quiet tension of the room, Elvis finally let down the walls he had so carefully built. He looked at Anita, his face filled with remorse and conflict, and admitted what he could no longer deny. With a trembling voice, he spoke about the emotional turmoil that had been consuming him, his feelings for her and for Priscilla woven in a way he couldn't unravel. Yet, despite this confession, he stopped short of making the decision himself, leaving it painfully in Anita's hands. It was a choice he felt too torn to make, perhaps hoping that Anita's strength would carry the weight he couldn't bear. For Anita, it was a moment of brutal clarity. She had hoped for an answer that would renew her faith in their love, but instead, she was left with a truth she hadn't asked for, a truth that left her with no choice but to decide the fate of her own heart. The realization sank deep, and with a heavy heart, Anita stood up and made her way to the phone. She dialed her brother, asking him to come and pick her up, her voice trembling as she spoke. Each word felt like a final goodbye, a step further from the life she had imagined with Elvis. As she hung up the phone, Anita felt an overwhelming sense of loss, a quiet certainty that she was leaving not just Graceland, but a piece of herself behind. She walked through the halls one last time, memories flashing before her. Moments of laughter, of shared dreams, of love that once felt invincible. But now, as she prepared to say goodbye, those memories seemed distant, as if they belonged to someone else. Her decision to leave was as painful as it was resolute. She knew this was the end, a break that could never be mended. As her brother arrived and they sat together for those final moments, the room was thick with heartbreak. Elvis and Anita sat across from each other, the silence filled with words that neither could say. Tears traced silent paths down their faces as they shared a grief that went beyond words. Plates of untouched food lay on the table, but neither had the strength or will to eat. All they could do was sit there, side by side, each feeling the unbearable weight of goodbye. Elvis watched as she left, unable to change the course they had set in motion, and Anita walked away, her heart shattered, carrying a pain that would linger long after the doors of Graceland closed behind her. It was the end of a love story that had once seemed unbreakable, a goodbye that left them both broken and forever changed. Number 1. The aftermath. As Anita prepared to leave, Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, sensed the weight of the moment and reached out to her, hoping his words might bring comfort. He had seen her as more than just a girlfriend to Elvis. Anita had become a part of the family, a steady presence in their lives. Vernon, ever the optimist, tried to reassure her, suggesting that perhaps this was not the end. "Sometimes people separate and find their way back to each other," he told her, his voice filled with a fatherly warmth and hope. He saw the love between Anita and Elvis as something rare and powerful, something that, in his heart, he wished would survive this painful chapter. But despite his gentle words, Anita felt the finality of her choice. She could see that Vernon wanted to believe they might someday reconcile, yet deep down, she knew that some things, once broken, could never be mended. With every step toward the door, Anita's resolve grew. She had spent years believing in a future with Elvis, one where they would stand beside each other through fame, fortune, and everything in between. But that vision was now a faded dream, and she understood that staying would mean living in the shadow of a love that was no longer whole. The warmth of Graceland, the memories they had created within those walls, would forever be a part of her, but it was now a chapter she had to close. With tears in her eyes but her head held high, Anita walked away, leaving behind the man she once thought she'd marry. It was a painful, gut-wrenching choice, but one that allowed her to reclaim her sense of self and dignity. She knew that by letting go, she was choosing herself, even as her heart broke. As she stepped out of the Presley family's life, she carried with her the bittersweet weight of a love story that would live on in memory, but not in reality. We'd love to hear what you think about this heartbreaking moment in Elvis and Anita's story. Do you think Anita made the right choice by walking away, or was there a chance for them to reconcile? How do you feel about the role Elvis's family played in their relationship? Share your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Your perspective could spark a fascinating conversation about love, loyalty, and the difficult choices we sometimes have to make. Let's dive into this emotional chapter together.